What is HVAC? What does that stand for? Thanks for tuning in to the ProfitDig Construction Show. I'm Jeff Givens. We've got special guest Jonathan Booker.
Good to be here.
What do you go by, Jonathan?
Booker works.
Booker?
Booker's
Okay.
fair.
Yeah, that's what I call you. Or Book.
Hey, that'll work.
Because I'm too lazy for the second syllable sometimes, you know. Jeff Spencer, our local construction expert.
Hey guys.
And then behind the camera, we've got producer Jerry throwing out the peace sign. All right. Well, we're glad to have Jonathan or Booker with us tonight. He's an expert in the HVAC industry, and so let's talk a little bit about what that means. What is HVAC? What does that stand for?
Heating, ventilation, air conditioning.
Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Okay. So if I break that down, I've got a unit at my house.
Right.
And as far as I know, I have one unit. I don't have separate units for heating and air.
You do upstairs.
So I have a condenser.
You have a condenser outside, downstairs, and you have a gas furnace upstairs.
Okay.
An attic, and then a package unit for the main floor.
Okay, so it's kind of different flavors.
Yeah, different flavors. A package unit, everything's built in to one box, we'll call it.
Okay.
Everything's outside contained. And on your split system, the condenser outside is for cooling. Gas furnace upstairs handles the heat.
And I think when our house was originally built, because we bought the house, we didn't build the house, but I think the decision at the time was to go with a split unit, probably because of size and weight.
Mm-hmm. And the duct work.
And the duct work.
Yeah, getting the duct where it needs to be. So you've got a copper line set that connects the two that the refrigerant pumps through to get to the evaporator coil upstairs for cooling. So
okay.
Upstairs, you've got your package unit down, the duct goes under the house, blows from the floor.
Yeah.
But there wouldn't be a great way to get upstairs. We've done it, but you'd have something you'd have to build around,
like a massive trunk.
A trunk to go upstairs and box it in. So it's done sometimes, but in that situation around here, most of the time a split system upstairs and a package down is the way people go.
Okay. And is that true for any number of floors? Like if you just go up like third floor, you're gonna have another split?
Yes, sir.
But one thing I've noticed over the years, people that's building their first home or replacing their first system is sizing that system.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand. I was going to ask you if you could kind of clarify, like, a 4-ton unit, a 5-ton unit, people are confused about, they think the actual unit weighs that much.
Exactly. Yeah. We run into that a lot. And the whole thing of any guy, put me in a 5-ton, I want to be cold.
Yeah.
You're like, well, you will be, but you're going to be really moist and wet.
Yes,
right. so sizing it is one of the biggest things. And rule of thumb around here, you'll have people go different ways, but 600 square feet per ton is a really, really close on a basic house, normal insulation, decent windows, 8-foot ceilings, and as you start to raise these ceilings, vaulted ceilings,
your square footage
goes down, and you get a manual J calculation to make sure you're on track.
So what does that mean, a J calculation?
It's a manual J is a form. You put your square footage, amount of windows, direction of the home. Pretty much you lay out that house, and it calculates a number for your BTUs, cooling and heating.
Okay. And what's BTUs, a British thermal unit?
So on if we come over here, build a 1,200 square foot starter home, most everybody's going to put a 2-ton. Some will go with heat pumps, some will go with gas, just depending on your location where you're building, and sometimes what people prefer. There's sometimes people who rental houses, they might prefer to go no gas. They don't want the renter to have another bill.
Right.
So, but as far as,
Well, maybe there's do you think there's extra liability with gas, like from an insurance perspective?
could be, I've heard landlords talk both ways, but sometimes they'll plug in heaters in every room, and then you've got all sorts of burnt
Yeah.
circuits and electrical problems. But around this area, gas is pretty prevalent. So,
And I've seen a lot of situations too where, I'm not an HVAC guy, but there's been situations I've come across where I believe like a unit is undersized. You know, the home, people say, you know, well, it's not insulated well or this or that. But like in the summertime, especially like July and August in the peaks, you know, when it's the hottest and driest, but the unit will run nonstop all day long.
runs all day.
Yeah. And for the most part, it's just an undersized unit. You know, if they
Right.
run another ton bigger, but, you know, but I would like for you to kind of go into going too big, you know, when you're talking about, you know, the moisture and stuff.
Yeah, if you go too big, the unit is what we call an industry short cycle. So you don't get enough run time in the cooling
To dry
mode
the air.
to dry the air and pull the moisture out of the air.
Right.
So the unit runs, say you set it at 72, it can reach that set point fast.
Yes.
You got a lot of extra airflow because the system's oversized, but it doesn't run long enough to dehumidify the air. You start noticing moisture, mildew,
Yep, you can smell a little mildew.
and I've
used to-
seen houses just rain
Used
because of
to,
it.
wallpaper was a telltale sign. Your wallpaper, when you got so much moisture, your wallpaper would start to peel
Really?
up.
Never. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, I dealt with some moisture issues not too long ago, and I can tell you, it was not fun. I spent a lot of money replacing floor joists,
Yep.
ripping stuff out,
Oh, man.
whole new kitchen, whole new bathroom. So I can imagine, like, maybe at first glance it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but long term, like you'd probably be ruining that home.
You could ruin a home. We've seen a lot of damage because of it. Undersized, oversized, and you've got to be pretty precise in what you're putting in and knowing the CFM that it calls for, knowing how to duct the house.
So you say duct, you're talking about the ventilation?
Yeah, your ventilation, the duct work that's connected to the unit, it's got to be sized. You have to know how
Is
to
that
lay
based
that
on
out.
the tonnage of the
Yeah,
unit?
based on the tonnage.
So when you say the size, because I think in my home, we have typically 2 vents in most rooms. Maybe a bigger room might have more, but is that, like when you're talking about size, I'm thinking of physical diameter.
Yeah, the physical
of-
diameter, yeah, of your
your
main
main
trunk line and your return air.
in the return, but also the size, does it mean also the number of outlets?
The number of outlets, because you might have, say, a 5-inch duct line in a closet, a 6 in a bedroom, 7s, 8s. So you have to total it out to equal 400 CFMs per ton. So each line has a number that coincides with what CFM you're getting to. So you have to add those lines up.
CFM, what is that?
Cubic feet per minute. So
How much air?
yeah, how
can
much
actually
air
push
is
through?
pushing through.
That's the
so
volume of air.
And to elaborate on it, you know, explain about how your duct starts off big and then it starts to step down.
yeah, it steps down so you can create velocity and get all your
Force.
calculations to force it through. So your house, I think we started with a 16, then we went down to 14 and then to 12, and then you cap it off. So you don't want to run just one solid 16-inch line all the way down.
Your last rooms are not going to get cold and they're not going to get hot in the winter. Yeah.
Man.
It's like anything, you're putting it in, it's going to get more velocity toward the end. So
Now, so we've talked about the heating and the cooling unit, the ventilation. I've heard you also mention insulation for the house
Yes.
and for the windows. Like, how important is that?
that's very important. Some of these older houses, of course, downtown area, you've still got insulation that was rock wool, a lot of them, and single pane windows. So
We might have some of those.
I'm not, yeah, I wouldn't be scared to overshoot a little bit on some of the older houses. That's came with just years of doing it, listening and watching some of the older guys do it. But, you know, if you've got a couple of big shade trees, maples right in the front yard, you can kind of look around and see.
So do you try to, if you know it's an older home, do you try to compensate for like
Leakage, yeah.
if you say
doors,
600
windows.
square foot, but you find out that home was built in 1940, are you thinking, do I
I
need
might
to
bump down to
upsize?
450 or 500, yeah, to upsize, where I might put a 2-ton, I might bump that up to a 2.5 ton.
Okay.
Just for the hot summer days. These units are only designed for certain temperatures. The same units you're gonna buy here in the southeast, they couldn't put in Arizona.
Oh, really?
They couldn't
Okay.
put those in up north, so you're specifically
For your-
buying these units for your region.
And is that because of the blower motors themselves? 'Cause I know a little bit about motors.
Right.
I don't know a lot about HVAC.
I know down, say in Florida, the coils, the outdoor condenser coils have to be specially coated or the salt
the
water
salt.
just eats them.
So it's environmental.
It's environmental and,
Well, and then we're like a high humidity area here. So that plays a big role into,
sure does.
yeah.
And so you'll see units down there, I'm sure you've been to the beach and the coils are just gone. You just see
Yeah.
copper winding that's left and, so they've changed a lot of regulations on
Okay.
what we're allowed to sell, and you know, a lot of them you look on the tag and not for sale in X or whatever region.
So if you were a homeowner and you were shopping around for units, that's something you'd want to pay attention to. And probably all the manufacturers.
The manufacturers, if you're buying it from a reputable company here, you know, Ed Supply, they know they've got in stock what you need
For that local area.
For that local area, but I've seen situations where you buy one online and it might not be what you thought you were buying.
Yeah, and if you didn't know,
And if you didn't know,
you thought maybe I'll
it-
save some money.
It would probably work,
Yeah.
but it might not be exactly right.
Yeah.
And I got a question for you too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is correct, but like your insulation, we was talking about that, you know, to kind of help people understand, but if I understand insulation is, the more air gaps you create between each level, then the more insulated you're gonna be.
there is a
That's
good
the way I've
insulator.
always
Yeah.
understood it, and
Yes, and so that's where your panes come in on your windows, like if you got a double or triple pane, the more air gaps you have in there, then the less leakage you're gonna have as far as air going out or air coming in.
And versus just having one thick piece of glass.
Right, it doesn't matter how thick that piece of glass is, it's still gonna be the same
still gonna be
as
the
a
same
single
piece.
small one, yeah.
The air gap makes a difference,
Right.
and in insulation now, you know, a lot of folks are going to the foam insulation, so that changes your whole calculation.
So is it because it's better?
It's a lot
Because it has
better.
significantly full coverage?
Sure thing, and that's so I ask most builders when they call, say, hey Booker, we got a house we're gonna build. The first thing I ask, gas or electric, what sort of insulation and ceiling height, and which some of the plans will show that, some don't, and some don't really know until they get the budget together if they're gonna have that insulation. So, but it does change it quite
So
a
that
bit.
insulation is quite a bit more expensive?
You can drop your tonnage by foam insulating a home.
Okay.
So I had a friend, he built a 2,400 square foot shop house where we'd have normally been 4 tons. We were able to do 2.5 tons, and it
Wow.
works great.
Significantly less.
And it worried me at first. It was the first one we done like that, and I just, man, I hope I hope we're right.
Yeah.
And I read and studied, called around, and everybody said, yeah, you're good. And been there 4 years this year, and keeps the house comfy. So
One more thing before we close out this session, on your duct work. Say you're going through the crawl space. What happens when your joints on your insulation on your ductwork are not taped properly?
you're gonna get a moisture problem again. Yes, sir. They will, if they're not insulated properly, they're gonna sweat. You're gonna have a river under your house.
And on that, I've been hearing that it's better year-round to keep your vents under your house closed.
I believe fully in that.
I've been told that, but I've always heard in the summer times open them up, and winter times close them. But I've been hearing here lately to protect, your system and stuff, and to be more efficient, to keep them closed year round.
Yes,
so
sir.
that's true then.
That's what we've been doing.
Okay.
Well, and on that same topic, that was the reason why I had so many issues at my house was my home was built in the 90s, and the regulations for ventilation under a home weren't the same then as they were now.
Completely different.
When we gutted our foundation and replaced it, we put in a fully encapsulated crawl space.
Yes, sir.
And we didn't go with like the cheap solution. We went, that thing is, it's nice under there. You can live under there.
You're right.
You really could.
Put a little dehumidifier under
but
there. And
it's got a dehumidifier. In fact, it's got 2 pumps. Right, it's a dehumidifier with 2 pumps underneath the house with perimeter. What's the word? There's tubing dug out around the perimeter in case moisture tries to get up from underneath, and those pumps pump out the water. So, like, you can go like pretty significantly invested into that kind of system.
Sure can.
But that system was a quarter of the price of what it cost me to fix the issues that we had.
not have to do it again.
Yeah, and honestly, the guy that came out and did our inspection, we didn't even have a vapor barrier under the house.
Oh.
It was just rock under there. And he said, you still would have had problems,
But maybe not as
but
bad.
you probably wouldn't be gutting half of your foundation if you'd had this
Moisture barrier.
moisture barrier
6
on it.
mil plastic.
Just that, I don't know, a couple $100, if they would have installed that on day one, you still would have moisture issues, but it wouldn't have been moldy, rotted to the point. It would have taken many, many more years to get to that point. And I was really amazed to hear that. But I guess when you're talking about heating and ventilation and air conditioning, to someone who doesn't know, it sounds just like, well, yeah, I got my unit, we turn it on, like,
Right.
keeps me cool, but there's really, it would benefit you to learn a little bit about that. Like,
It does. There's a lot to it. There's a lot behind the science of it, and
it's your most expensive appliance too, right?
it is. It is.
Well, I think it was a good conversation. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This is the ProfitDig Construction Show. We're glad to have Jonathan Booker.
Yeah, thank y'all for
with us,
having me.
with
Griffin Mechanical,
in Dixon, Tennessee.
Dixon,
Service
Tennessee.
in the Middle Tennessee area.
Middle Tennessee area.
Perfect. If you're looking for a job bidding and costing solution, check us out at ProfitDig.com. We're really proud of that software, and it makes all this possible. So thanks for tuning in. Give us a like, share, subscribe. Have a good one, guys.
See you guys.
See you.